Hey everybody, this is Lou. Today I'd like to do a video on creating a mechanism in your app that will allow you to use multiple different configurations. This is useful because during your development process, you may need to use different API URLs or different API keys than you would on a production app. Or you may even need to use something like different add units, or sometimes, if you're like me, you like adding special features into the development version of your apps to allow you to test it a little easier while you're developing it. And you can do that by creating this configuration mechanism and building it in development mode when you're developing it, and building it in production mode when you are ready to release it. So today I'm going to go over how you can do that relatively simply, and it's pretty flexible enough that it allows you to add in any number of configurations that you need for your development environment or your production environment specifically. So the first thing that we want to do in order to accomplish this is we're going to want to start our new app, and we're going to want to copy the core stateless widget for your app into its own file. I'll show you how to do that, or what I mean by that. Basically, we're going to create a new file adjacent to the main.dart file called app.dart. We're going to copy everything from the main.dart file into the app.dart file, and then we're going to delete the main function out of the app.dart file. Then we're going to go back over the main.dart file and make sure that the only thing that's remaining is the main function. And then we're going to need to make sure that we also reference the new file that we created so that we actually have a my app to put into the run app function. So now with that done, we can move on to what the bulk of this whole tutorial is about, which is creating the configuration that we need in order to allow for this different build process for the different environments. The way that I like to start this is I like to create a new directory adjacent to the main.dart file called configs. And then inside of that directory I put a new Dart file called appconfig.dart. This is going to be where the class that handles all the app configuration lives. First, it's important to define at least a basic list of the different environments that we may need to build for. In my case, I like to use production, staging, and development, but maybe your case has more steps or less steps. It's up to you which ones you use. Next, let's create the class that holds all of the configuration for this build of our app. I like to use a singleton for this because it makes it globally accessible by simply including the file instead of having to pass it down a chain of widgets. You can use whatever mechanism you'd like. Personally, I find this to be the most efficient. Then let's define a scaffold function that will allow us to set all these configurations at one time. With that, we also need to define which configurations we want to keep track of. For instance, in our example, we want to keep track of the environment that we're in, an API base URL, because that might be different from environment to environment, and a API key, which might also differ. Then we're going to update our little scaffold function to accept those as parameters, and then that function is going to assign those parameters to the class properties that we're keeping track of. When we assign our class properties from these parameters, we need to make sure that we pass through the existing value of the property in case the parameter is not supplied. We do this by using the double question mark operator, which basically says if the parameter is null, then assign what's after the double question mark, which is the original value. You probably noticed that I made the properties of the class private by putting an underscore at the very beginning of them. Now, this is intentional because we want to only allow them to be set through the setConfig function. so that later if we want to trigger like some sort of change notifier or something of that nature, we can do that because this is a single point of entry. So because of that, we need to create some getters for each one of these so that they can be read-only while they're set. Once we have all of that set up, now we can actually use it. So what we're going to do is go back to our main.dart file, and we're going to initialize this app configuration for our production environment. We're going to define the environment as production. We're going to input the appropriate API base URL and the appropriate API key. We're going to save it. And then we're going to copy this file for our development environment. So we're going to give it a new name, main_dev, and copy and paste the code from there into our new file. We're going to update each of these parameters to our app config set config function to reflect what we need for our development environment. We're going to save that, and then in my case I create a staging environment as well, so I'm going to do the same thing again, make a main file that's for staging, copy and paste the settings over there, and then adjust the settings for the staging environment. Now it's time to make use of this beautiful configuration tool that we've developed here. We're going to do that by going over to our main.dart file, and we're going to implement some adjustments that will allow us to know which app configuration we're currently using. We're going to do this by, well, first we're going to update the title of the app so that it reflects that we're doing a tutorial here. And then after that, we're going to update the app bar so that it indicates to us when we run the app which environment we're actually running it on. In a perfect world, if we run this straight right now using main.dart as our build point, then we should see environment.production as the name of the environment that we're currently using. So let me do that right now. So as I suspected, you can clearly see that our app bar does reflect that we are on the environment.production build of our app. But the whole point of doing this was so that we could have multiple different configurations. So let's do one for the development environment. The way that you're going to do this is you're going to go over to Android Studio, go up here in the action bar to where it says main.dart, open that drop down and then click Edit Configurations. Once you're in the Edit Configuration screen, you're going to want to duplicate the main.dart configuration, and then you're going to want to change the name of that main.dart configuration to something more meaningful for development. In my case, I'm going to use the file name main_dev.dart. And then you also need to update the Dart entry point so that it points to your development build point, which was the main_dev.dart file. Then hit apply and OK, and that should immediately switch you over to main.dart build profile. And when you build it now, it should show environment.development instead of environment.production. So let me do that. And there you go. You can see it says environment.development now, where it used to say environment.production. So effectively what we've done here is we've created two different entry points for our Flutter build. One entry point is for our production environment, where we use all the production data like the appropriate API URLs and keys. And then the other one is for our development environment, where we use our development API URLs and keys. This will help you so that you don't cross-mingle your data between production and development, and it will also help you with your QA processes and stuff like that if you have a QA department, stuff like that. But you can use this tool for more than just simple changes like what's in the title of your app. I personally like to use it so that I can create a debug menu, which is its own screen, and in that screen I usually have different options that help me through the development process, like reset some value in the background, or change my user, or give myself extra coins, or whatever I need. So this can be a gate for that screen. You can just wrap that screen in an if statement, basically, that checks to see if you're in the development build, and if you are, then it adds it to the available screens. So this is just something that's uncommon, but should be more common among Flutter development community, and I hope that this has been a big help for you. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out, and I'll even put some sample code up somewhere if need be. Okay, if you like this tutorial, feel free to like and subscribe. If you have any questions or comments, put it in the box below, and if you didn't like it, then downvote it. Alright everybody, this is Lou signing off.